Hello, everybody, and welcome into Game Night here on 102.5 The Game, Facebook Live. Willy Daunic here with you, broadcasting from my home on the east side here, and I'm really pleased to be joined by Derek Mason, the head football coach over at Vanderbilt University. And Coach, thank you so much for doing this with us tonight.
Willie, thank you for having me, man. It's great to be on with you.
Well, we've been having some really interesting interviews during this time. Of course, we're all fighting through and waiting to get back to the whole speed of life and getting back to doing things we're accustomed to in the sports broadcasting industry, the coaching industry, on down the line. But in the meantime, one of the things that we've really enjoyed doing with the pace slowed down a little bit is to be able to catch up with people who maybe aren't in quite as much of a hurry. Pace of life is slowed down and you get a little bit more reflective on life. How have you tried to take advantage of this time while this has gone on? What have been the silver linings?
Well, the silver linings, for me, as it slowed down, I've had an opportunity to really enjoy my daughters. They grew up fast. Like in coaching, you move a couple of times. My children, one was born in Idaho, another one was born in Pennsylvania. And it's been Minnesota, it's been Palo Alto, it's been New Mexico. It's been, a lot of different stops, but, with that, Dad always went ahead a little bit, and even when I got to the spot, it was always about the grind of, football and what that is. And it's a blessing within itself. But now that my girls are a little older, I've got one that's 21 and one that's getting ready to turn 20, and they're different. It's different for me. It's different for me as a dad. I see it, differently. I can understand now what my mom, felt like, seeing her son go to college, and really after college, I never came home. And now, when I look at my daughters are in college, and the idea of them coming home is probably, null and void. COVID-19 made it possible for them to come back to us a little bit and just spend some time. And so I'm thankful for the time. I'm thankful for being able to, look at, what I've been blessed with, across the board and be thankful. And I've really tried to pass whatever I do understand and I do know in the short time that we do have, like together, like on to my daughters about, what I believe is important. A lot of times when we don't get a chance to talk to our children about like what's important, to us, man, they think what we do is important, but really it's not about what I do. It's about, where I've grown, what I've learned in my journey, and hopefully just being able to pass that on to them gives them a different perspective of dad as dad continues to move on, in this next phase, whatever that looks
like. You just referenced one of the things that stands out about yourself, to me anyway. You've been so many places, right? And you're not unlike a lot of football coaches in that respect, but you know the country very, very well. What it's like to live in Arizona or Minnesota as opposed to the Southeast where you are now. Where do you think, especially with Vanderbilt being a place where you're going to recruit the whole country, you might recruit a guy from New Mexico just as easily as Tennessee, for example. So where do you think that gave you a lot of wisdom and maybe knowledge of how our whole nation works? Because you've been to so many more places than many.
Yeah, I think for me, I tend to look at somebody. I think every region of the country has something specific, to it. Some of it food, some of it music, some of it, cultural, some of it regional. Everybody's got something different. And, having had a chance to move around the country and be around the country a little bit, I really respect all things. I respect all cultures. I respect, my ways of life. I respect, I really respect people's differences. And I think, for me, it's not about being one thing. It's about, what are you uniquely, to yourself? What makes you different? And it's not just about being different, but, what sets you apart? And, sometimes it's about, as I've been around the country, again, just certain things, whether it's, food, whether it's music, whether it's, how you grow up. I've been able to see, small towns and big towns, in big cities. And, what you find is good people are good people. What you find is is, genuine things are genuine things. To be able to see somebody, strum a guitar or be able to play a bass. Like to me, they're both musically inclined, but they're two different instruments, and really, how people go at those instruments, are very different, but they both create something special, something unique. And like for me, being able to, have seen that, it has been special, for me and my family as we've been able to journey. Just look at people for what they are, who they are, and be able to take that uniqueness and be able to, sort of pay homage to it.
We all have different perspectives on Vanderbilt. To us, maybe somebody who grew up as a quote sidewalk alumni who's never left Nashville, they have one appreciation for Vanderbilt. Somebody who maybe came to school who grew up in New York or somebody or someplace like that might have a different perspective. Because you've been to all these places, now that you've been at Vanderbilt for a while, what do you appreciate most about the university itself? What makes it unique in your mind?
I really respect and love that Nashville is a big city that feels like a small town. When you walk the streets of Nashville, I mean, it's unique. You can feel the music in the air. You can feel the liveliness of the city, but you can get right outside the city and you can find yourself being, 5 minutes from a lake that you can jump on with a fishing pole, man, and catch some fish. People genuinely respect privacy here. I think for the most part, they've seen stars, they've seen regular people, and they treat them all the same. I think what you find in this town is that when good folk are good folk, and when you talk about the entertainment industry, I think a lot of people in the entertainment industry have ran to this city, okay, in droves just to get away and just feel normal, to not get caught up in the rat race. This isn't a rat race city. It's a city that has a heartbeat. It's got business, commerce, entertainment, but it's also got a genuine love, whether it's musical tastes or whether it's food. Nashville's a foodie town. It's whether you're going Germantown, whether you're going East Nashville or West Nashville, whether you go 12 South, Franklin, it doesn't matter. This place has a uniqueness, to it. And it's really a town of neighborhoods. You go from one neighborhood to the next, and it's really cool because you can touch a lot of different neighborhoods from North Nashville to really, when you talk about, and being in this area from North Nashville over to let's say West End, and it totally different vibe. Germantown to 12 South, totally different vibe. I just like everything that this city's about. And I'm not saying that because I'm here. I've been here longer than I've stayed at any other place in my career. So I think that says a lot about how I feel about Nashville, because like for me, if it didn't feel good, I probably would have left a while ago.
Mm-hmm. You, like everybody, has got a unique story
Mm-hmm.
on how you arrive at where you are today. That's one of the things we tried to do with a lot of great sports subjects over the last couple of months. A lot of the people that very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you, because I've tried to ask this to a lot of different athletes and coaches, and the answer is always very, very different. But who got you in love with the sport of football? Go back to when you were a kid. What drove you? What's your first good memory of the game?
My first, I would say my mom drove me, and not because she was an overbearing mom or somebody that loved sports, and really worshipped it. I think my mom knew the lessons. Having had brothers, a brother, Calvin Demery, that played in the NFL, drafted by the Minnesota Vikings, played at Arizona State. My father played at Arizona State. I think my mom understood the value of what football could do. My father wasn't around, and so in looking at growing up, I think my mom, got me involved in sports. Period, just so I could learn how to compete. I can learn how to, manifest those characteristics of sportsmanship and really, in the inner drive, and that it takes to make it where I come from without all the negative influences. And so I thought my mom, understood way more than I did. Obviously, to be able to put me around men that could pour into me. Okay. And in looking at that, I think that's probably why I got into coaching. I can go back to my first Pop Warner coaches and look at, how they invested and what they taught me and the lessons that they talked about and hard work. Even as a young guy, I think I understood what hard work was. And so I was smaller, okay, than a lot of other guys. And so if you were smaller, you had to be quicker and tougher. And I think those were characteristics that sort of came, out for me. But then on top of that, just learning how to work. And my mom worked hard. My mom worked for Motorola, and she worked a couple of different jobs, but she always helped me understand the value of hard work. And so the athletic piece of going to the boys club or being in after school sports programs and or Pop Warner really developed my skill. But I think the idea of drive and how to work, those things were taught to me, as I grew through sports, because I thought there were always guys on the block that were pretty good. And in order to be able to be picked to play in the game, you had to continue to work on your skill. And as I got older, I got picked a little more.
We're talking to Derek Mason. This is Game Night here on 102.5 The Game, Facebook Live. And Coach, you referenced this before. You said your dad wasn't around. Coaches can become great father figures in a way. And I'm curious, as you got into your teen years and into college and you're playing, who were the father figures for you? Maybe a coach, maybe somebody else around you that helped you through that role, to help get you through those times.
Yeah, I think for me, I've always stood on the shoulders of the men and women that came before me. So, mom, grandmother. But when you start to talk about, coaches, I think my high school coach, Dr. Gary Somo, he was my position coach. Pete Killen was my high school head coach. But really, as I look back, I can say two men, Dr. Somo, Gary Somo, and really Melvin Minifield. Those were the two men who really helped me understand what I could do and where I could go. I thought they really helped me define, what I could be. It was always positive, man, but it was always you got more in you. And I think Melvin, his son Kevin and I were best friends. Kevin Minifield and I played on the same team. Kevin wound up playing at Arizona State, playing in the NFL. But growing up together and playing in the same high school, his dad became like my dad in terms of the sports piece, because all my free time was spent at Kevin's house. So when I wasn't at Kevin's house, I was at Dr. Somo's house, and his sons, David and Darren, who were my age, both of whom were going to be engineers. Those guys, I had a group of people around me. I had a network. But Dr. Somo, who was a math teacher at Camelback High School I graduated from, Dr. Somo was my position coach. And Dr. Somo, who was from Youngstown, Ohio, so he understood like the okay, he understood. He came from a rough background himself. So, him inviting me into his Italian home and his Italian family let me see a different side to family. But he was always about the work, and he challenged me to academically be better. He didn't just challenge me. He made sure if I was going to be around his sons when it was time to study, it was time to study. And so we all studied together, and I thought that was great. Same thing with Melvin. When me and Kevin were together, that household was much about competition, healthy competition, and about making sure, man, that we drove one another. And so, man, we pushed each other. So those two men, I think, throughout my high school career, helped me. But when I got to college, I think it was totally different. The men that I met in my recruiting process would be some of the very men that would define my career or help define my career. Men like Brad Childress, Andy Reid, Marty Morningwig. Marty Morningwig was a GA at Northern Arizona. Tom Melvin, who's still on Andy's staff um, in Kansas City, was a GA with Marty Morningwig. And so, you know,
Isn't that amazing? A program like for people that maybe we're not aware. So you grow up in Arizona. You go to Northern Arizona, which is not as well known as a lot of these Power 5 teams, SEC teams. But you just mentioned some names that have ties to that school. That's a pretty special thing when you're talking about. So go through the list again and their connection to Northern Arizona.
Yeah, I can tell you. I played for 2 staffs, and I think both of these staffs had men that would wind up being influential. My head coach was Larry Quintera, and Larry Quintera was the head coach at Northern Arizona, but he was the defense coordinator at Arizona State for Frank Cush. And my dad had played for Frank Cush, like at Arizona State. So my mom knew Larry Quintera and trusted Larry Quintera. And back then, I thought it was different because, your parents told you where to go. It wasn't like the cap and, when you got a scholarship offer, I mean, you were honored. I wanted to go to Arizona State, but I wound up going to Northern Arizona, and that's where my mom said I was going to go, so that's where I went. But on Larry's staff or Coach Quintera's staff, I had a chance to run into guys like Andy Reid and Brad Childress and Marty Morningwig and Billy Callahan was on that staff as the offensive line coach. I mean, and that was a great group of coaches. But then that staff would leave 2 years into my tenure, and Steve Axman would come, and then I would have a position coach by the name of Dino Babers. Then, Carl Durrell was on that staff. As I look back, Ken Zampese was on that staff. I went through a couple of staffs with a lot of really good coaches, and Northern Arizona just happened to be a hub. But if you go back to 1AA football at the time, that conference, the Big Sky Conference, was one of the best, 1AA conferences. I mean, when you start talking about Boise State, when you talk about Idaho, when you talk about Montana State, Northern Arizona at the time, I mean, there were some good teams, and there were a lot of good coaches that came through there. And there are a lot of credible coaches, when you start to talk about regions. And in that region, the Big Sky was a good developmental time and place for really good young coaches. But that first coaching staff of, Andy, Coach Callahan, Coach Childress, Marty Morningwig, Tom Melvin, that group would follow my career. They would. I mean, coaches that recruited me when I was 17 years old and are really still a part of my life today.
Yeah, and I want to get to a couple of those guys here in a minute, but tell people how you made the transition into coaching, because that's what I think a lot of people, they ask me as a broadcaster, how do you get your break? You need somebody to give you a break, an opportunity when you have an interest like that. So who was that for you that got you in the door?
I think because of the influence of those men and how they and how they shaped, and some of my teammates, I found myself not knowing whether or not I wanted to be a coach. Steve Axman offered me an opportunity to be a GA, and I said no. I went back to the Valley. I went to go coach for Dr. Somo in the inner city in Phoenix, and he had become a head coach at the time. Dr. Moody Jackson, who was my first high school coach, had become the superintendent of public schools. And Dr. Jackson had asked me to get my emergency teaching certificate because he wanted me to teach. He felt like my where I was from, the kids would sort of move towards me and gravitate towards me, and so he thought I would be impactful in my community, and I did. And of course, Dr. Jackson was right. I taught history and government. That's where I started. I started my career teaching history and government, but soon found that football, I couldn't get away from it, and I loved it. The first time I stepped on the field, it was like being in the classroom, except, I understood so much about the game because I played offense, defense, I performed on special teams that, I just became infatuated with the game, became a really strong student of the game, a connoisseur of the game, and that's where it started. So um, I wound up coaching at Carl Hayden High School. Um, I left Carl Hayden High School after 16 months and went to um, Mace Community College and found myself coaching with one of my college coaches, David Rice, who had become the head coach at Mace Community College. He gave me my opportunity at Mace Community College, and then it would just so happen that my first position coach in college, Dave Arslanian, or actually Paul Arslanian, his brother. Dave was the head coach at Weber State. Paul was the defense coordinator. Paul gave me a call. They wanted me to go to Weber State, and I left Mace Community College after one season, coached in a bowl game, and then I went to Weber State University and never looked back. Wow. That's where it started.
So you had this journey, and you mentioned some of the names that you've worked with at one time or another, and these are big time names. These are A-list coaches. So I just want to name off a couple of them, and I might skip around the timeline here, but just give me a quick thumbnail on maybe what you learned the most from guys like this. And so let's start with Andy Reid, because here he is. He's just won a Super Bowl. He's an extremely popular guy who's won a lot of games. But the thing you hear about him more so, I think, than the brilliance of him as a coach, he always seems to be regarded as this really genuine guy. So what's the number one thing you learned from Andy Reid?
Love. Andy, he loves unconditionally. He loves his family, and he loves the players he coaches. He loves the game, and when you love, he's committed to his family, the game. He's committed to everything that a football coach should be committed to. And so when I think of Andy Reid, man, I was so happy, man, just like everybody else. But he love is what I see. I mean, you can see how genuine it was from his players. I mean, even before the game even commenced, just the week leading up to it, those guys wanted to win for Andy. Those guys were playing, the game because they wanted to win. But how often do you see grown men truly act like children? Those guys, man, love Andy, and I think that's who he's always been. He's been somebody that transcended color. It wasn't about color, man. For Coach, man, you knew he cared about you, and you knew, that he had the best intentions for you. Okay, whether he was hard and stern on you, or whether he gave you a hug and told you the truth. Coach Reid was always going to tell you the truth, and I think a lot of times in our lives we need people to tell us the truth.
What about Mike Tomlin? To explain your relationship with him. He's another guy that has the utmost respect. He's been in the one place for such a long time, and a really tough place to win. You're under the microscope when you coach the Pittsburgh Steelers for as long as he has. So tell us about your relationship with him.
Mike Tomlin is somebody that I look to, man, but I talk to as well. When you say look to, when I saw Mike become the head coach, for me, it made it all possible. Truly, it made it all possible. When he was leaving Minnesota to go to Pittsburgh, I was coming to Minnesota. Had known Mike. Obviously, he played at William & Mary, and very smart, very intelligent, sharp coach. Was well thought of in the coaching profession. But those weren't the things that drew me to Mike. It was in his ability to be believable, okay, and genuine, and command. I mean, he made them take notice of who he was, not by what he said, or not just by what he said, but really how he walked. He walked it, like Mike believed it, okay, and he made you believe in him, and that's a skill. To have people, walk and believe in you, that's a skill. A lot of people say, it was the Rooney Rule that got, Mike Tomlin hired. Well, maybe it was, but I know this much. You got to walk into a room and capture a room and make somebody fall in love with you in order to get the opportunity, and that's exactly what he did. The people at the Vikings loved him. The people in Tampa loved him. And when you look at Mike, Mike, again, he's able to lead men. When you can truly lead men, it shows. They play for you. They commit to you. He's also able to discipline men. And I think that's a skill that you just don't see a lot of nowadays. A lot of people let young men go their own way, but he's been able to make the tough call and make tough decisions, and that's something that's an admirable trait. When you talk about like having to make tough decisions and do the tough thing, Mike's done it time and time again.
It feels like I hear this from a lot of coaches and hearing you talk about those two guys in particular.
Mm-hmm.
That Andy Reid, you start thinking about these brilliant offensive schemes he's known for.
Right.
But what a lot of coaches have told me over the years is you get into it and you think you've got to out-scheme everybody, you've got to out-fox everybody, but over time you almost learn that the other stuff that you're just talking about, just motivating people, creating an environment where everybody's on the same page, everybody's getting the most out of their ability, is more important than the X's and O's in the game planning. Would you agree with that?
You know what? I think I would agree with you. I believe that those are the elements that make those coaches unique. Their X's and O's are superior. Andy Reid's always had great X's and O's. Mike Tomlin's always had great X's and O's. I think, even as I've grown with my relationship with Coach Belichick, okay, his X's and O's are outstanding. But I think when you look at what he's done, he's been able to take, the most the toughest athlete. He's been able to take the most disingenuous of athletes, that people say the cast-offs, and he's been able to, reinvent those guys and help those guys reinvent themselves. Why? Because I think he understands people. I mean, I think he understands the idea that, they want to be good, but sometimes maybe it's about your structure and how you deal with them and where you meet them. Okay. And do you put, some serious parameters around what they do? Because I think everybody wants discipline in their lives, but the reality is only certain people have been able to do it. Coach Belichick is one of those. And so when I look at coaches, when I look at people that I look to, they genuinely have strong qualities, okay, that allowed them to really set themselves apart. And I think they're all good ball coaches, but I think you got to be more than a good ball coach nowadays. There are a lot of good ball coaches that have come and gone.
How about Jim Harbaugh? He's another guy that always is a lightning rod. He's a guy that's, high energy, grabs a lot of attention. You worked for him at Stanford. What did you learn from him? What did you take out of that experience?
Well, I thought, Jim was, a person, in my mind who was everything that you thought he was. He was tough. He was blue collar. And those are the things that really he really demands from his team. He wants his team to be tough. He's a khaki wearing, cinched belt, pulling, hat down, glasses, ball coach. That's the way he played the game. I mean, Coach Harbaugh's personality to me is no different than he was as a player. He was hard-nosed as a player. He was, uber competitive. I got a story about Jim. He asked me to go play tennis with him one day, and we were, on campus. The tennis center was right behind our office, and we went out there and played. I thought it was going to be, maybe a couple sets. We played for like an hour and 45 minutes, and he didn't want to just win. He tried to put me in the dirt now. I mean, that's who Jim Harbaugh is. I mean, he's one that if he's going to compete, he's going to compete at a high level. And so that's what you see. He's highly competitive. I mean, when you look at the recruiting, highly competitive. When you look at games, highly competitive. He hates to lose. Okay, man, he wants to win. And you almost feel like he'd do anything to do it. But I think everybody's got a line, and Jim's got that line. But he draws you in. He makes you believe. And in believing, what you do is, man, you wind up taking a different ride, a wonderful ride. I love my time with Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh is a special man, and he taught me a lot about, mind over matter. Attitude affects outcome.
Mm-hmm. And then I want to ask you about another person that we've known in our own way for a long time because we watched him play, but you know him in a little bit of a different way, and that's Eddie George. You coached his son. It's always tough, I know, or challenging in a lot of ways. You have all of these families, you know, who have entrusted their sons to play for you, and
Right.
you know, not all of them get all the playing time they're looking for, but that's a pretty special case to coach Eddie George's son. And obviously, you know, his son is a very special guy. We've learned a lot about him over the years, but he's not like his dad in terms of he's not rushing for 1,000 yards in the NFL. But at the same time, he's going to go on to be a really successful person. So tell us about your relationship with Eddie and Jahir.
You know, Eddie and I met a while ago. I mean, it may have been when he was, you know, was still playing, and or maybe he was just finishing up, and I was just getting to Minnesota. But you know, I mean, the one thing about Eddie, you know, his personality just lends itself to everybody. I think, you know, I mean, he's one who makes everybody feel comfortable. But I think our relationship, you know, grew and blossomed. You know, as we got a chance to know one another, you know, throughout my coach career, you know, and I'd see him at different spots. You know, when I came back from the NFL and I was in Stanford, I saw him at a couple different spots. And when I took the job here, obviously I went through the recruiting process with Jair. Um, and like for Eddie was always like somebody, man, who gave good advice. You know, Eddie was somebody who cared about, you know, and seeing people take you know, their journey, and you know, is interested in other people and wants to hear other people's stories. But you know, as I talked with him during the recruiting process with Jair, I think he learned a lot more about me, and I learned a lot more about him. He had been with David Williams at Ohio State. David was with him during that time, and David had told me stories. And so when we had a chance to get together sometimes, you know, I mean, those stories came out and it was good. But through the recruiting process, I really got to understand, you know, who Eddie George is. And, you know, he's a man of many facets. I mean, he's got many layers to him, you know, from football to acting to, you know, investment connoisseur to businessman. I mean, he just can do so many things. But his son was very much the same way. Jair was a talented, you know, man, young man, you know, man, coming out of a great program, you know, I mean, in DC. I mean, he came from DeMatha, and he came from a great football, you know, man, legacy. I mean, a great football program. But here's what was important about that. I think Eddie believed, man, that I was gonna, you know, coach his son, you know, man, to the best of his ability, not to the best of Eddie's ability. And I think, you know, that was something that was clear. I mean, this wasn't about, you know, Eddie. This was about Jair. But Jair is very much like his dad, extremely talented in a lot of different areas. But, you know, as we went through this and we had a chance to figure it all out, I think, you know, our love and passions for some of the same things like music and just the game really became evident. And, you know, man, we've become, you know, close friends. Jair is now at film school at USC, and he's well on his way in his career. But, you know, having had a chance to coach him, having had a chance to spend time with that family, I truly know that you know, when that relationship was meant to be. And, you know, Eddie's always going to be a friend. Jair's always going to be one of mine, and so I'm thankful.
All right, I got two more questions for you, Coach, before we
Let's get it.
I got one from the audience here. And if you're a high school football player right now, I know we're all dealing with the uncertainty, but I'm sure there's high school players that want to figure out how to get the best out of themselves during this time. So what would be the number one piece of advice you would give someone currently playing high school football? You could take that in any direction you want.
Willie, what I would say to anybody out there, especially, you know, when you start to talk about, you know, young people, athletes, you know, where they're at. I believe COVID-19 has provided us, you know, some issues that we have to deal with, but I believe you have tough issues, that you have opportunity. You know, it's about mindset. It's about, you know, attitude affecting outcome. It's about making sure that you try to, you know, find ways and opportunities to be better. And this just isn't coach speak. I tell my team this all the time. The world has enough problems. Okay, man, we got to be problem solvers. We got to figure out, you know, man, how we can be better, you know, in this time. Because if you can come out of COVID-19 better, okay, not only did you get better, but the people around you got better. Okay, I mean, your team gets better. And I think that's where we sit today. I mean, there's a great opportunity for you to find a way to be better. I mean, whether it's your mind, whether it's your body, whether it's helping somebody. Okay, man, because every investment that you make into somebody else is karma. It comes right back to you. So make an investment in yourself, make an investment in your community, make an investment to your team. And if you do that, man, male or female, what I believe is, again, it's karma. I believe good things happen to good people. I believe good things, you know, uh, good things will come out of COVID-19. I mean, I know we've had a lot of pain like during this time. I mean, people have lost loved ones and people that they know, but I truly believe that, that's not in vain. We're going to be better because you exercise the opportunity to get better.
All right, let's end on a fun one.
Let's do this.
I was told that you have some radio experience, that you were once upon a time a DJ. That music, but you talked about your love of music a minute ago. So tell people how music gives you a good balance, away from the coaching, but also tell us about the radio show. So you have your own little studio, right? You can spin records. Tell us about your program.
Well, for me, the idea of music, I grew up like much like people that came through the late 60s, 70s. Music was a voice of generations. I mean, you talked about what it meant. No matter what was going on, there was a song that was written about it, and they could tell you, exactly what you were experiencing at the time. And that's when I fell in love with music. Truthfully, music has always been something that's special to me, and I've liked all types of music, from jazz to early R&B to true soul music. I mean, there's different genres, man. But then I look at classical, and classical music. Like, to me, when I played the violin as a youngster, my mom made me play it, and so classical music has a place in my heart. But for me, I've just always loved music, and in college, had a chance to get a radio show.
Right, so what's the music on your radio show? What music are you playing back then?
You know what? Back then, it was R&B, some hip hop. I mean, it was Tribe Called Quest. It was Bell Biv DeVoe. It was Boys II Men, a little New Edition. I mean, it was a late night show. I mean,
this is right on my wheelhouse, Coach. I want to hear the show. This is good.
I mean, it was it was 12 to 2, Quiet Storm, and so I'd play hip hop from 12 to 1, and from 1 to 2 I slow it down a little bit.
Late night. You're talking late night.
Late night. I'm talking late night. In college, nobody's really listening to the radio early, man. Everybody's they're listening to music late. Absolutely, but I've always had music as a love. A couple of years ago, when I got rid of my iPod DJ, my wife bought me some turntables a couple of years ago, because I had given my turntables away in college. But she bought me some more a couple of years ago, and I got back to spinning, and I got a lot of music. And so for me, the balance, you need a balance. When I come home, like sometimes, and I don't get a chance to, some people come home and watch TV. I'll come home and I'll spin records, for an hour and a half, and it's all mood music. It's amazing. I mean, if I need to slow my mind down, I'll turn on some Anita Baker and roll into some other music. I mean, I mean, I've got so much music. I've been listening to Marvin Gaye and Isaac Hayes. I mean, I'll go back if I'm trying to mellow out, but I'll listen to some current hip hop if I'm trying to move forward a little bit and just trying to get a little bit of energy. So it all depends. But for me, music has always been a first love. So I've stayed there with it, and as I've gotten into this COVID-19, we did the Feed the Heroes movement, or opportunity, where we were doing some things with first responders. But then once we were done with the Feed Our Heroes opportunity, and I decided to make sure that I can spend some time with our alums. And I really wanted to do something a little different. And so I started this morning show called Coffee with Coach. It's a Zoom cast.
Yeah. So tell us about that. You can see the background. People have probably seen that. Some people may know what you're doing with that, but for those that don't, explain.
Yeah, but the Zoom cast is an opportunity for me to be able to talk to former, football greats here at Vanderbilt. And I'm going to have more than just football players, man. And I want I want alumni, I want business people, I want people who have come through Vanderbilt just to talk about their experiences and opportunities. So, man, I'm speaking to one now. So that's the tables are turned, but
Yeah.
the idea is just like this. It's to be able to talk about the Vanderbilt experience. What did you learn during that time? Because I don't care if it was the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, 90s, or even now. I think Vanderbilt has a lot of unique properties that still resonate with students today. The times were different. Maybe what you experienced a little bit was different, but I think Vanderbilt as a whole, it provides a unique opportunity, for those who've been through it to understand, the brand of Vanderbilt, doing it in this city, being able to play in the SEC and what that can provide for you. And so for me, it's been something that I've had a fun time with, but I think the people that I've talked to have enjoyed it more.
Wow, that sounds great. So Coffee with the Coach, I hope a lot of people catch that. So Coach, thank you so much for joining us and spending some time here. I would hope that a lot of people listening to this might have learned a few things about you that they didn't know before. So thanks for taking the time. And I know we'll talk again here very soon on our radio show in more of a conventional setting here, but I've really enjoyed this, and take care. I know we'll see each other again very soon.
You know what? Thank you, Willie. You know what? I look forward to having you on Coffee with Coach, so we can talk
anytime.
a little bit about.
You tell me, I'm on. I'm there.
About your experiences, man. So I look forward to it. So thank you. Take care. Be blessed.
Oh, that would be awesome. All right, so that's Coach Derek Mason, and that is Game Night here on 102.5 The Game on Facebook Live. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Anchor down.